Welcome back to the Reality Guys. I am your host, Billy Blinks, joined as always by my co-host, Brian.
Good evening.
Well, Brian, we have finished the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip season 1. It was a show that we ended up watching because we have a little mini series called The First Impression Bros, which is a little play on words from the First Impression Bros from the Bachelor franchise, where we watch a random show's first episode and decide if we think it's worth watching the rest of the series. We may adjust it going forward sometimes to a random episode, even if some people say the first seasons aren't great, if something we want to give something a fair shot. So for this, we did the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. I'm a big Real Housewives fan. I've watched 2 or 3 of the franchises all the way through. Brian had never seen any Real Housewives before this.
Yeah, you just told me to watch the latest New York, which you said was awful.
Which was like the worst, critically agreed and fan agreed that it is the worst season of New York. But again, so this, if you're unfamiliar, was a basically mashup season, Avengers style team up of some of the all stars per se of the Real Housewives franchise. So really quick, I will run through who the Housewives were before we give our kind of pseudo review and if it's worth watching for you guys. So the housewives that were on this season, I'm just going to do first names. Cynthia and Kenya from Real Housewives of Atlanta. We have Luann and Ramona. They're from Real Housewives of New York. We have Teresa and Melissa. They are from the Real Housewives of New Jersey. And then finish it off. We have Kyle Richards from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Um, Overall, Bri, before we dive in, who was your favorite and least favorite housewife?
The least favorite's definitely Ramona. I mean, I don't have as much exposure as you do, but man, I don't know how these people are even friends with this woman. She's nuts and just like completely tone deaf. But I think my favorite's probably got to be like Kyle. Just she seems the most like relatable to me.
Yeah, I like Kyle. So I have to agree. My least favorite is Ramona because it's Ramona's world and we're all living in it.
Yeah.
And conversely, my favorite character is Ramona because honestly, Ramona is so unique. And if you ever go back and you watch these Housewives season, none of that was an act. I love, and we'll get into it, but the flashbacks and the production value of this show. And they pulled out so many classic Ramona moments that are still funny, just objectively. But there are things if you watch that you were thinking about, like, oh my God, I really hope that they call this out. And they do. And you can't take your eyes off her. I don't agree with 99.9% of anything she says or does, but she is by far the most entertaining to watch. And at the end of the day, we review reality TV, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the train wreck. An honorable mention also to Kenya, because Kenya really came on evil towards the end of the season, where if you watch Atlanta, that's more the MO of Kenya. So you got more authentic Kenya there at the end. So overall, Brian, I want to ask, what were your thoughts just going in at finishing episode 7? What did you like? What didn't you like?
I actually think this is like a cool idea because they could just make they don't do anything, so they just make content of being together.
Mm-hmm.
So they have, I guess, they have the followers and the power, the star power to like do these things, like because they didn't really do anything that cool, like on this trip. If you think about it, like they just literally follow them. They watch them eat and just complain and bitch at each other. But I mean, that's the whole premise of the show to begin with. Like, I can't tell you the plot of these series because it's a world that we don't really understand, that we'll probably never understand living that way. But it's just there's a couple times where I just be like shaking my head, like, why are we arguing about this? It doesn't matter, but that's their life.
It is their life. I did love that they all got their kind of like theme days. And I like the idea. I love the dude who owned the bar. What was his name?
John, I think.
John. He owned the bar. There was the guy that Ramona was into that Luann ends up trying to steal and cuck away from her. But
Yeah.
the guy is single in his 50s, has never been married, not divorced, no kids, and he owns a bar in Turks and Caicos. Also, MVP was the butler
Michael.
guy,
Yeah,
who
Michael.
Michael, who Luann literally was basically trying to rape the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, that guy was married. There was like a couple moments where I was like, if his wife sees this, he could be in trouble. he could be in some trouble.
Unless they're like real free spirit. Yeah, he was like doing like photo shoots, calling them sexy. He was like doing shots out of Luann's mouth and
Yeah,
stuff.
that was the one I think that crossed. That was like, if here's how I look at. I try to look at these things and relate them in my life situations. Like,
Oh my
if
god,
I did that on TV, what would happen to me when I came home? And I think I
divorce, divorce,
yeah.
done, no
And
shot.
like, and it was nice to see that these other girls were like, yeah, if I saw blah 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 doing that, I'd cut his dick off or like whatever they said. Like, it's just unforgivable.
I think overall for me, my biggest positive is the production value and the editing and the timing of the editing and just the quality of the edits. Top tier, really up there with some of the other shows that we really love, like F Boy Island, which had great editing, and Love Never Lies, which has some great editing. Nothing, it does not compare. Whoever they paid these people some good money, because these are not the people. If they're the people that have done the Real Housewives before, they do flashbacks. They really were given a much higher budget and really there for it. I think my biggest downside, and I think it comes from being a Real Housewives fan, is this is a show. If I'm going to like lean in percentages, it's 75% for people that have seen these seasons
Yeah,
and 25% for newcomers. It is not super approachable. I don't know how many people. I know Brian was in for it because me and him and I do this, and he ended up having fun with it. But I don't know how many people would go through like the first one or two episodes and really feel like they need to watch all seven because they've gotten a taste for what it is. And that would be a fair assessment. I think if you're a fan of it at all, you really, because you know there's some. I knew that Ramona and Luann were going to fight. You knew Kenya and Cynthia were going to fight if you've watched these seasons. I knew Teresa and the stuff with Teresa and Melissa would come up. They were being so nice to each other. But if you watch the season, you're like, they don't really talk. Like they're not really close at all. There's a lot of really, they usually got in like fist fights and stuff. Like, but they're playing really well together. But you know, this is going to come up. I really wish they had them together for 2 weeks. If they had them together for 2 weeks, there would be some stabbings.
yeah. They would have the tension would have built a lot like higher, I think.
Is there anything else really major thoughts you have about this season?
I do like. I know we're getting a season 2, and I actually think the premise of how they're not using the same characters, I think, is really cool.
Yeah, so I can actually go through that really quick before closing. So they do have the season 2 cast actually already announced. So from Beverly Hills, we have Taylor Armstrong and Brandy Glanville. Oh my, Brandy is outrageous, dude. When I mean beyond outrageous, like top 3 to 5 outrageous housewives of all time. From Orange County, we have Vicky Gunvalson and Tamara Judge. Those are OG ones, and they've had a real long history as well. Orange County is one that I've actually watched all the way through. And then we do have 2 New Yorks, Dorinda, who is apparently being posed as like one of the main characters or like kind of like the narrator, which she's great. The Berkshires, for those who have watched, and Jill Zarin, who was an old school original New York City housewife who did an X amount of seasons, and then when her husband Bobby got sick and passed on, she kind of stopped doing the show. And it's finished out with 2 Atlanta housewives. We have Phaedra and Eva Marcille Sterling, both of which actually are going to, I'm really think are going to spice it up. So, Bri, I think we have to close this with: would you recommend this? Yes or no?
Yeah, I agree with what you said that if you watched it, you know about it, it's definitely worth a watch. Like for me,
Mhm.
obviously we do this show, so I'm a little more easygoing about it. I probably would not watch that if I didn't do this show with you.
So it's like a soft yes. And that's kind of what I'm going to give you. Not a soft yes, not really based off the content, but it's something that if you have a history of the Housewives, definitely check out. But I do think it's something that you could watch, see a few of these people, be like, I need to see them on their seasons and check out a season. So I do think I'm going to give it a soft yes as well. Please like and subscribe for anything else reality TV related, The Bachelor, Survivor, Challenge, and Real Housewives when they do eventually get back into a season we want to cover. But for myself and Brian, peace.